I'm sewing up a print from my Spoonflower shop, which I will link below. This is for the drawstring mini bag. So first thing I'm going to do is cut out all of the pieces. That's the main fabric. The next is the lining. And then I'll have the casings and the cording that's going to go inside the casings. The first thing we're going to do is iron the cording in half lengthwise, and then we're going to fold in the raw edges to the center and iron again. And this will make it small enough to where it will fit inside the casings, and it will also finish off the raw edges nicely. It's pretty thin to be turning right side out, so that's the best way to do it. I'm using my lining piece as a guide to make sure I have a 1/4 inch on each side when I fold my casings in. So the casings, you just want to finish that side seam. So I've pinned it so that it's a 1/4 inch from the edge, the raw edge of the lining piece. And then I'm just tucking that raw edge into the fold and pinning it because I'll top stitch those down each side of the casing and do that for both casings. And then we will take those things to the sewing machine and we'll sew the casings, the edges of those, and then we'll sew that cording together. Once the top stitching is done on the casings, we'll make sure we turn under the cording edges on each side. So we'll turn it under about a 1/4 inch. So we're unfolding it, turning it under, and then folding it back into itself. And if you have clips, it'd be handy to use a clip to clip that together. I just kind of held it together until I put it directly in right under my needle so that I could sew it down. Now this pattern that I'm using is a pattern that I have developed a few years ago. It is a printable pattern and I'll link it below. I have an older video of making this same exact drawstring mini bag. I've just decided to make it a cut and printable pattern from Spoonflower so that I can design any print on it I would like. So now what we're going to do is we're putting together the main pieces of the bag and I'm pinning them together. I had to give them a little bit of a stretch just to make sure they're lined up perfectly and pinned together. And then I sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. You'll want to do this for both the main fabric and the lining. And you can choose which print you want as the lining and which one you want as the main fabric. Just make sure that for your lining piece, you're leaving an opening at the very bottom so that you can turn the whole project right side out. And your space you want to leave in the lining is about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And that's what I'm doing right here, is leaving that space open at the very bottom. And at the end, you'll see how I'm going to finish it off. I actually have a few of my tags that I've sewn together, and I put that into that hole and top stitch it, and then it looks really nice and finished after. So we're going to turn the lining piece right side out, and then we're going to put it right sides together with the front of the bag. So make sure your right sides are facing each other. And I'm pinning the seams so that it will line up very nicely. Once I've got those side seams pinned, then I'm going to take my casing pieces. And the casing pieces are those shorter striped pieces. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to put those in the top of the bag. So we're folding over the casing pieces so that the wrong sides are together. and then we'll slip that right inside of the lining and the main body of fabric. So make sure all of the right sides of the fabric are touching. So you're having 4 layers of fabric to sew through here. You've got your main fabric, your lining, and in between that, you've got your casing, both right sides folded together. And we'll pin that all the way around, and we'll stitch a 1/4 inch seam all the way around that top of the bag. Now I'm just pulling the lining out so that I can go ahead and turn the bag right side out through that hole that I made in the lining. I happen to have a flathead screwdriver sitting right next to me. It's handy to use on my sewing machine when I need to tighten different things. So I'm actually going to use it here in just a second to straighten out that U curve and just make it nice and tidy. And then before I turn the bag into itself, I want to go ahead and finish sew closed the opening that we left open. And this is where I'm going to use one of the tags that I've already made and put it right inside that opening and then top stitch that closed. And then it actually looks like you meant to leave that opening so that you could put a tag on it. That's one way to do it. You do not need to put a tag in there. You can just top stitch it closed. Once that's done, we trim our threads, tuck that lining into the bag, and then we can go about putting the cording through our casings. This requires some kind of a tool. I'm just using a large safety pin to secure it to the end of my cording and push it through that top casing. You can also use a tool, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's a bobkin. I'm not sure if that's correct pronunciation, but I will also link it below if you have one of those tools or if you would like to purchase one of those tools. So what I'm doing is on one side of the bag, I'm putting the cording through and tying a knot. And then as soon as I get that side in, I will switch to the other side of the bag, put the cording through both sides. So each cording piece will be doubled on each side. That's how you can pull it shut. If you watch what I'm doing, I put the first cording piece through both sides on the right side of the bag, and the second piece I'm putting it through both sides on the left side of the bag. Once both sides are done, knotted, you can pull each side and it will cinch it together. And the cords are just long enough that it opens nicely, and they're not too long that they'll hang over the bag too far. I'm just kind of giving them a nice tug so that those knots are knotted really well. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy making your own drawstring mini bag.